I'm still concerned about that black officer and that fabricated thing about he's down by the river. What do you think happened? Why do you think that happened?
It was a cover-up. They knew it happened earlier, and they knew people possibly saw what happened, and this should have showed up on the police report around 2 o'clock. But they fabricated that. I think they fabricated that just to make me think, okay, we got a bus driver that called in. We got to cover that up. We got to make everybody think that this happened later in the evening. So I think they just did a reactivation of it just to deter people and make people assume that they chased somebody and nothing happened. In actuality, they chased someone and caught him and threw him in the river. They knew what happened. It was just a cover-up.
What is your intelligence on what happened to the homeless people who were in the area?
I was told by these homeless people that they were threatened. As a matter of fact, one person, when we were looking in the area at that time, combing the area, trying to find him, the man was scared. I mean, he was like, ma'am, I didn't see anything. He was scared. Coincidentally, this was the same man that later stated he witnessed the murder. And after I started talking about my son being shot, I was told there was an officer that beat him severely, and he left town. And I haven't seen that man since. I won't call his name. And I guess less than a year later, there were 2 homeless people, bodies found in this river. And the person that I saw in the boat that day, when the body came up, that said he was the one who surfaced that area and pulled that body up, which I believe that to be true, because we saw this man in the boat. He and another person surfaced in the area where the body came up. Less than 2 hours later, here's the body. And so supposedly authorities pulled him out, but he was like, ma'am, I'm the one who found your son's body. There was a lot to it. There's so much to talk about that incident.
Okay, now, what did the authorities tell you about your son's body when they recovered it? What was the next moves on their part?
Well, first they told me that I couldn't even ID the body. I was here when the body came up, when they pulled the body out of the river. And
they refused
They told
allow
me
you to.
Right. They did. They told me I couldn't identify the body.
First, so what was their justification for that?
Well, David Matthews, Detective Matthews at that time, he told me that, ma'am, he said, I'm 90% sure that that's your son, but the face was just too mutilated. The first, he said, ma'am, the face was just too mutilated. He didn't want me to see it. And call the name, the deputy coroner at that time, Lonnie Molly, about 2 times, because he went back several times because I was refusing to leave there without identifying my son or seeing him. He told me several times that Lonnie Molly told him to tell me that I could not identify my son.
Do you know what his reason was?
Well, I was told that the face was mutilated. He said that, I want to make sure I get this right. He said, I'm 90% sure of your son because the handcuffs had RWS on it, Roger W. Stembridge. And I'm trying to think now. I just had a blank memory just thinking about it.
Okay.
Yeah. Because, I mean, I was seriously mad with them because I wanted to view my son's body before I left. And, like I said, they refused.
Well, when did you get a chance to see your son?
Maybe 2 days later. That was on a Monday night. Tuesday, the body was supposed to be released to me, Tuesday. But they called me and told me that I couldn't view the body Tuesday. Matter of fact, I spoke to Lonnie Molly personally Tuesday, and he told me that they were going to identify the body by fingerprints. And I'm like, if the body is that swollen and waterlogged, I mean, how are you just going to get fingerprints that fast? But anyhow, they identified the body and released the body the next day. They didn't release the body that Tuesday. They held the body another 24 hours before they released the body.
Did they do autopsy on the body?
Well, supposedly they did an autopsy, but from the photographs you don't see an autopsy. No x-rays, no blood study. Supposedly there was an autopsy done, but from the autopsy report, from the photographs, I don't see where autopsy was done.
When you saw your son, what did you see?
I saw mutilation. I saw the bones were sticking up in his forehead. You could see under the skin where the bones were just out of place in his forehead. Above his right eye, there was a hole. The right ear, there was a hole. Right above the right knee, there was a hole, and there were several holes in his right chest. The shoulders were out of place. The legs were twisted. There was no way they could have told me that the bones weren't broken. They had to be broken. There was skin slippage, true enough, but there was blood up under the tissue. You could see the whiteness under the skin, but there was blood up under there. The mouth was twisted. Trauma.
Was there water in his lungs according to the authorities?
No. The medical examiner documenting her report, significant findings was bilateral penetrative hemorrhaging of the temporal skull bones. But there was blood. You could see blood coming from his ears. And hemorrhaging. She said that the handcuffs were significant, which that was too, is significant. I think because they were hinge cuffs. And they stated that he slipped them in the front, but that's not possible with the hinge cuffs from his size. And then they had a garment tied around him in a knot, which they didn't pronounce. They didn't make sure that was just known. She documented that the garment was entangled around the handcuffs. From where she tried to say at the inquest, he slipped them in the front. But I got a photograph of him where it was tied in a knot. And as a matter of fact, the person that was there when they pulled the body out told me that he untied the knot, and that's where he saw the handcuffs. And even the mud that was on the face. They had pictures of him with mud on his face, pictures without mud. He was like, man, when I pulled your son out of the river, there was no mud on his face. They put it there to cover up the bruises because it was so bad, severely bad. But I was told the face was decapitated from the skull. The impact just blew it apart. That's what I was told. And I believe that because when I did a second autopsy on my son, the body just fell apart. The bones, the feet weren't even there. And I put him in a sealed casket. It just fell apart.
Okay, tell me about the autopsy.
The autopsy.
Request.
The autopsy. My request to Mr. Lonnie Miley, who was the deputy coroner, who called me during that time. Matter of fact, and I called him back because I wanted a thorough autopsy done on my son because of the circumstances here. A supposedly unwitnessed drowning. I asked for a complete autopsy. And I wanted the autopsy to be done out of Macon. I didn't want it done in Macon because who was supposedly involved. And he told me that it didn't matter if I did it in Macon or Atlanta, the same medical examiner would do the autopsy. And that was not true. Because I thought it was a conflict of interest for it to be done here because of who was involved, and I felt as though they were covering up. On the autopsy report, it states that a complete autopsy was requested, but that's not what I got. That's not what was there. And even when I called the GBI in Atlanta for an open request on getting the photographs, which they say there were only 10 photographs, none of an autopsy. There were of maybe 3 or 4 pictures with him closed, not close-up pictures, no close-up pictures, no, like I said, no autopsy photographs. And for a medical examiner to state in her deposition that she ruled out fractures and trauma by vision and book knowledge is totally ludicrous. That's ridiculous. You can't rule out trauma.
No x-rays?
No x-rays, no tissue study. At least where the whiteness was and blood was up under there. You could see the blood clearly with your eyes. I didn't have to have book knowledge or, the vision. If I saw this, I know she saw it. And that's why I took photographs of this. That's why I had so many questions. And when I was questioning her about the teeth in fair repair, about the teeth that were missing, that she did not state were missing, but she put in fair repair, I'm like, what happened to his missing teeth? Which one of the persons that was there and witnessed it said they knocked several of his teeth out. He said he had 2 of the teeth, and they threatened him. But all of that would have been clarified if there were detailed photographs of everything she saw.
What was the rationale for not honoring your request for full autopsy?
Cover up. Cover up.
What excuse did they give you?
They told me cease and desist. They told me not to call anymore. Don't ask any more questions. Don't call anymore. They had an attorney call me. They sent me a letter. They sent the GBI after me twice because I was asking her questions about the autopsy. And the Georgia Death Act, here was an unwitnessed death, and you call it a drowning, but the drowning is a rule of exclusion. You got to exclude out any other cause of death, especially an unwitnessed death, and then in custody, because she knew that she would be coming up against her other forces. fighting for justice.